You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. So good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism and Meditation. Hopefully you're all at the right place. Anyone supposed to be somewhere else right now? Eating pizza? Watching cartoons? No? This is where you really all chose to be on a Tuesday night? Come on. It's interesting, the reasons that we choose to do this practice, and that reason is completely different for everybody, which is what I find even more interesting, is that we all take a different approach to meditation and Buddhist practice. And all that matters is that you understand the reason that you have a practice. Someone just asked me a question downstairs, and I thought it was, I'll just share it. One of the things I love about Buddhist practice is the ability to completely make up how you use this practice in your life. And knowing that that's not wrong. So for example, somebody just said to me downstairs, they had just received 2 little Buddha statues and they wanted to set up their own personal space at home. And they asked if there was a way to kind of consecrate or bless these, statues as he created his own space. And I said, do you have a specific tradition that you follow? Or, do you have monks or nuns or anybody who's going to show up and do this for you? And he was like, no. I said, okay, great. Because what that meant was now I was just totally clear to make up everything. And so what I said to him was, when I asked, I said, do you have a shrine space or whatever that you use? He said, yes. I said, is it already set up? He said, no, I have one. The other one's on the way. I guess his friend sent it to him or something. And so I said, when the second one arrives and you set up your space, I said, just sit down with it, make an offering, water, rice, incense, whatever you want to offer to it, flowers, make an offering to it. And then with your heart and with your mind, set your intention for why you're creating that space. And then do a meditation practice for however long you want. And then when you're done, just join your palms and do what we call transfer of merit. And just say something to the effect of, any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. And he was like, wow, that's pretty good. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good. Because I just completely made that up. Like that. And it meant something at that moment to both of us. Now, I could have just as easily given him, some chants in Mandarin Chinese and said, here, chant this, or go find a, Japanese Zen priest and have that person come in and do a bunch of chants in other languages that you won't understand. that won't mean anything to you. Or you can do something for you that actually resonates with you. And people often ask about Buddhism in the West, and I hate the phrase American Buddhism. It's so just American to like take something and call it our own. But I won't go off on that right now. But people often ask about this American Buddhism, and I just don't resonate with that personally. I resonate with Buddhist practice and Buddhist teachings. And then how we as humans, whatever country you're from or whatever your background is, how we bring this practice then into our lives. And so for me in that moment, that was the most beautiful way that this individual could sit down and create a space. And in that way, he is blessing his own space in a way that is meaningful to him. And every time he sits down, hopefully I should have told him this. Hopefully I'll see him next week and I'll remind him. But hopefully every time he sits down after that first time that he reflects on, why am I doing this? Because very often what happens with Buddhist practice or meditation or anyone ever had like a really good like habit or intention or goal that died out after like 2 weeks, right? I mean, New Year's is the perfect example of that kind of stuff. It's the new year, we got all these resolutions, and I'm going to do all this stuff, and then, 3 weeks later it's gone, and then 9 months later you're just waiting to start a new one, in the next year. But we're very often setting these kind of unrealistic expectations, and we also forget very often why we begin to practice. And for years, I would always ask people, why are you here? And it's not that there's a right or wrong answer to that, but it's important that you recognize what would lead you to be here on a Tuesday night, whether it's your first time or whether you've been coming for years, whatever it is. And same thing with this one individual. What is it that is sitting in him that is giving him this sense of, I need to create a space for myself to be with at home, where I'm comfortable. And these practices can remind you each time you sit to come back to that initial intention, right? Because we'll lose sight of that. I still to this day reflect on what drove me 18 years ago to go to that temple. That still inspires me every day. And it's because I was greedy, I was angry, and I was ignorant. And I'm reminded of that every single day. And the practice is to be less greedy, less angry, and less ignorant. But if you're at this for a number of years or a number of weeks and you kind of are like, well, this stuff's not really working, it's been 6 months, you're missing what this practice is about. It's a lifelong practice. And so there's kind of an expression in Buddhist teachings that, once you're on the Dharma wheel, you never are off of it. Meaning once you are exposed to the practice and the teachings, it's in your consciousness forever. It just stays there. And so there'll be moments or stages or phases in your life where it's maybe a bigger part of your practice. And there'll be moments or stages in your life where you're kind of just, not that into it. And that's part of the journey as well. But I think my point was just remember what your intention is as to why you start cultivating a meditation practice or Buddhist practice. Because whatever that initial reason was, that thing, even though it might have changed forms, is probably still there. That feeling of anger or sadness or depression or loneliness or stress or anxiety, whatever that thing is that led you to begin the practice, probably is still there in some way. It just changes forms. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start with the meditation practice. There's a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. All right? Posture. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. If you're on a bench or a chair, same thing, just relaxing the shoulders, trying to sit up straight. I will guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything but to sit and breathe. Starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting. Breathing. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, simply sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech, quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the cause and relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to How do you feel always? Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, this won't fix it. It simply makes you become aware of your life that's a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. And then you begin to make changes in your life so your life goes a little bit easier. This is simply an opportunity to reflect on your own thoughts, your own words, and your own actions. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. Sitting, breathing, working on learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. Which is what makes this such a fun and easy practice, because you just have to be nice to everybody. That's it. That's all. You can do that, right? I mean, the night's almost over, so you can at least be nice to everybody the rest of tonight. If you go straight home and lock yourself in your room and go straight to sleep, it's a challenge, right? We spend so much time trying to fix, control, manipulate things and people around us. And when we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But as I spoke about at the beginning of tonight, this is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not a 6-week course that all of a sudden everything is better. It is a lifelong practice of recognizing your role in everything you do. And that's the challenge. So I just want to touch on one thing relatively briefly, and then open up to questions. But someone asked a question the other day, and it's they sent a message with a question. And for me, just to put it into a little bit of context, I don't do one-on-one stuff. I always say at the end, the people here, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. I don't say that as part of a script. I've just said it so many times for so many years that it might just sound that way. But we really are just struggling practitioners, no different than anybody else sitting in this room. And so when people ask certain things, I'm very clear on, to me, boundaries are very important in a place like this. We see a lot of people brand new, a lot of people who are lost and confused. None of you, I'm sure. But a lot of people that are seeking, craving, desiring that person, to fix them, heal them, save them, teach them, guide them. And we're yo, that's not us. Go somewhere else, So I'm very careful with boundaries, because once you create that dynamic, then people start putting you on this pedestal just because you're sitting up here, and they think that you might know stuff. And so anyways, I just don't get into one-on-one stuff with people. If I'm downstairs, I'm around here, you ask me a question, I'm not going to turn and run away from you, right? I mean, there's a chance I might do that. I have done that before, but I'm just very careful with that stuff. And I just don't like spending one-on-one time communicating with people about the Dharma, about Buddhist teachings, which doesn't mean I don't love this path and I don't love this practice, and it doesn't mean I don't care about you. It just means I'm not going to take you on as a one-on-one, client. So let me come back to the question. I just wanted to give it some context. And so they asked, the question was around the word suffering, right? And the first thing the Buddha taught was life is suffering. That's the first of the Four Noble Truths. How miserable does that sound? Right? Hi, welcome to Buddhism. Anyone brand new? This is your first night ever to Buddhism? No? Great. All right. Some of you I know are relatively new, but most of you have all been here at some point before. But when you're first introduced to it, and someone's hi, welcome to Buddhism, life is suffering, you're well, this sucks. Somebody years ago said, they picked up Buddhist texts 20 years ago, and they read page 1 and they read life is suffering, and they never turned to page 2, And then 20 years later, they realized there is a page 2, and then it made sense to them. But the word dukkha translates most typically to the word suffering. And the word suffering is so heavy, so like dramatic, right? I like better translations of the word dukkha: discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, things that just seem kind of not right, a little bit out of place, a little bit off. The example I always give is you order a sandwich, you hate mayonnaise, you get mayonnaise on your sandwich. Or you're in your car, you don't like the temperature, so you turn the air on, or you roll the window down, or you turn the air off. You know, you don't like the song that comes on, you change it. You don't like the way a certain shirt looks on you, you change it. You don't like, the commercials, you fast forward through them. So there are these little things throughout our day that are not life-threatening, unless you're allergic to mayonnaise. So this idea of life is suffering, life is dukkha, life is filled with suffering, doesn't mean that all of life sucks. It just means that every single day of your life, every day, you're going to experience dukkha. Did everything go exactly how you wanted it to today? Is there anyone in here that like your entire day, even when you had a lot of good things happen, because I know you had a lot of good things happen, did every single thing go today exactly how you wanted it to? Anybody? No. And so you experienced dukkha. It might not have been that heavy, it might not have been severe, but certain things happen that you don't love, that you don't like, that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, or whatever it might be. This is dukkha. And so what the Buddha wanted us to understand, I believe, is that every day we experience this sensation of dukkha. And it is based on our perception and judgments of all of life's experiences. So you had your day today, you had a full experience of things happen, and each one of those things, without even really knowing it, you chose like, dislike, neutral. I like this, I dislike this, this is neutral. That goes on in your little subconscious mind your entire day, every moment of your life. Like, dislike, neutral, like, dislike, neutral, right? It's like we have these categories, we put them in. And so this practice is beginning to recognize, what did I like and why? What did I dislike and why? What was neutral and why? And the Buddha taught that when we have aversions, things that we dislike, we run away from them. And when we experience pleasure and things that we like, we run towards it. Neutral, we're just kind of like, hanging out in neutral, waiting for one or the other to happen, right? So this is our life. Now, this isn't necessarily meant to be intellectually understood on a very deep level. It's pretty basic. It's not easy always to become aware of this. But the one thing I caution a lot of people on with Buddhist teachings, no matter, whether you're brand new to this stuff or you've been at this for many years, there's nothing to figure out. There's not like this, secret mystery Buddhist thing that you're going to like unlock, with this magic key, and all of a sudden all of your life's difficulties are going to be answered or go away. All Buddhist practice is a mirror. And when you look in that mirror, you're looking back at yourself. And that's it. So all of these teachings, including life is filled with suffering, is just an opportunity to recognize how, where, and why am I suffering? Am I experiencing discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction? There's not much more to it than that. Like, it's really that simple. But I've been around this practice, and more specifically around people in this practice, a long time. And what happens is when people come into this practice and they have a very philosophical, intellectual mind, and they like to try to figure stuff out. Anyone like to try to figure stuff out? That was quick. I didn't even finish the question, right? Don't try to figure out Buddhism. There's nothing to figure out. You're either greedy, angry, and ignorant, or you're generous, compassionate, and wise. And you're probably varying extremes of that throughout your day. That's all that this practice, I believe, wants us to recognize. Not, why did the Buddha say this? What did he mean by this? When did he say this? What language was it in? Where did he say it? How does it translate? Like, don't complicate this stuff. Way too many people complicate this stuff, and they miss the heart of the practice, which is, what am I doing? That's it. So the intellectual philosophical approach, I get it. It's fun. That's how I entered this practice, trying to understand it. I remember sitting in like little study groups those first couple of years, the first 2 years at Temple, and we were reading Nagarjuna, and it was like this 4th century Buddhist philosopher. And I remember like trying to show how smart I was by like disagreeing with this 4th century Buddhist philosopher, trying to prove like why I thought my views and my perceptions were right, and why this dude that people have been reading for, God knows how many centuries, he's wrong. Let me tell you how it is. Like, once you get over that and you just start to come back to, what is my words, what are my thoughts, and what are my actions? That's when I think you really get what Buddhism is about. So try to simplify it. I get it. It's fun. It's enticing. You got all these numbers of things to memorize, these 3 Dharma seals, the 4 Noble Truths, the 5 Precepts, the 6 Paramitas, the Eightfold Path, like endless. Memorizing all those things won't do you any good. But putting the very basic teachings into practice, that's what it's all about. That's where you begin to, I think, benefit from it. Now, at the end of the day, if you go to sleep every night, and you wake up every day and you go throughout your entire day and you are perfectly happy and at peace, then this practice is an absolute waste of your time anyways. But I've yet to meet people like that. Because if you really think about it, very often we struggle throughout our days. And that struggle is not going to go away. It's just going to change from person to person to person, from place to place to place, from thing to thing to thing. And the one consistency in all of that is this self. So I struggle with things constantly. And I have to recognize, well, why am I struggling? How am I struggling? And what can I do to work through this? And sometimes I can. And sometimes I can't. But I don't open up like the Buddhist text and look for, this passage to try to tell me what to do. You have to hold up the mirror and look back at yourself. So, just wanted to touch on life being filled with dukkha. And also, because every moment of your day is not discomfort, angst, and dissatisfaction, what that means is there are a lot of moments throughout your day that are filled with happiness and joy and pleasure and excitement and fun and all of those things as well. And this is the balance. But it doesn't mean we overlook and ignore the dukkha. So, with that being said, I will pause and just use the rest of the time we have together to open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with that I can address, and we'll go from there. Yeah?
So, let's see how to be brief. I come from a lineage of hands-on healers who do bodywork, like deep bodywork, right? And so my ability, I can induce states, people into deep states of relaxation while they're releasing the body. And when you mention thought, word, and action, I kind of associated it, I had an aha moment, like I associated with my belief that we are beings that are living in multi-dimensions, in the mental, physical, and emotional, which is emotional for me is the heart and everything that our soul feels. So my question is, how can you do the correlation between the Buddhist practice, which is sitting and calming the mind, so my enemy is my mind, okay, to the physical reality of spirituality like the Sufi that
Sure.
they send to dance. So
Yeah.
how can I link those two? Because I
Yeah.
know that our body is alive and the reaction, the movement is expression.
Yeah. So I would love to repeat everything you just said for our millions of YouTube followers, but I will try to sum it up. I believe you said that you yourself, you do body work, healing, and so you help people deal on that level. Mental, physical, emotional. I talked about body, speech, mind. How does the Buddhist practice and the teachings correlate within the physical realm, physical world? So is that fair to say what? Okay. So it's important to understand that, yes, while we did a seated meditation practice, that's just what we did. That doesn't mean that's all of what meditation is. Meditation ultimately is a concentration and focus on the present moment. And the Buddha taught very clearly, whether you're sitting, standing, walking, lying down, it is all a meditative practice. So it is not just sitting here perfectly still, because we don't sit perfectly still the rest of our lives. We're lucky if we can sit still for 60 seconds without going crazy, right? So I often talk about how we come together here, but the real practice is when we get up and we go out there, right? How did you feel after the seated meditation?
Very open.
Very open, okay? Did you drive here tonight?
No.
Do you drive?
Yes.
Okay. Let's say you were driving home tonight, right? And somebody cut you off on the way home and then started screaming at you. How would you feel at that moment?
If I'm coming out of this place, I will still be calm for a little.
If you're coming out of this place, you would still be calm for a little bit. That was a lot of, okay. So let's say you leave this place and you're still open and calm, and you decide you want to go get some ice cream on the way home, and you drive through and you get some ice cream. And then you make a phone call while you're having your ice cream, because you can't eat ice cream and talk on the phone and drive at the same time. And then like 30, 45 minutes go by, and now next thing you know, you're on your phone, you're looking at all your social media stuff. So you've been gone an hour. And now you start driving and you're on your way home and somebody cuts you off. How are you doing at that time?
That doesn't resonate with reality at all.
Doesn't resonate.
I want to block from here, so
Okay, but the beauty of it is I'm sitting here, so I get to throw my reality on you, right? Work with me here. You get my point. The point is that we don't meditate and sit perfectly still and quiet to do that the rest of our lives. That's not reality. That's not anyone's reality. Our reality is that we engage in the physical world. And you walk, and you exercise, and you drive, and you eat, and you dance, and you go to bars, and all these types of things. Varying different things for, different people. But you do all of these things. Buddhist practice is not about being a good little Buddhist inside the temple for an hour a week. It's in everything else that we do. So physically, mentally, emotionally, body, speech, mind, that's our karma. The Buddha taught that we generate karma, action, what we think, what we say, and what we do. So you have opportunities to focus on what you think, what you say, and what you do during everything you're doing. Everything. Not just here. The reality is, for most people, we come to places like this because it tends to be easier here. Because here, nobody just cut you off. Nobody served you food you didn't order, right? Nobody's yelling at you, except me, right? But you signed up for that. So in here, you're getting kind of what you expect. But as soon as we get up and walk outside these doors, you're not going to get what you expect. And so we have to bring this body, speech, mind, physically, mentally, emotionally, into everything. And a reason that we carry so much physical tension and stress. And you know this, I can see you shaking your head, and it's the first thing you said. You said, your own mind is your worst enemy, right? You did say that, right? Yep. So there's a Buddhist text called the Dhammapada, and it says, it starts with, mind is the forerunner of all evil. Again, I also don't like the word evil, the translation of that, but it's the same thing. You're saying our mind is where we begin to carry stress and trauma, and then our bodies are destroyed and our hearts are closed. And so Bodywork is a beautiful way to help flush all that out. But if we don't deal with this thing, as soon as you get up off that table or however you're doing the body work, what's going to happen? I bet you have a lot of repeat clients, right? And the reason is because we don't have the ability to be at peace mentally.
Embody the relaxation.
Yeah.
We get the relaxation, but it's like a temporary fix.
Temporary.
We don't get to embody the
Yes,
relaxation.
it is temporary. And very often with meditation, it's the same thing for a lot of people, is they get that kind of temporary fix. And then as soon as you walk out these doors and you go back to the rest of your life, that openness, that calmness that you're feeling starts to kind of fade away. So, thank you. Other questions? Yeah.
One of the precepts is avoid intoxicants.
Yes.
But there are some intoxicants that seem to have like healing properties, such as like psychedelic mushrooms or MDMA or whatever. What is the Buddhist view on
I love this question.
intoxicants? versus
No, and I'm just sad I only have 5 minutes left because I just summed this up. So the question for those who didn't hear it is, one of the 5 precepts is, you said avoid, to refrain from intoxicants, right? And then you said, but some intoxicants have healing properties, like psychedelics.
Mhm.
I'm quoting you. So what are the Buddhist teachings on that? Is that your question?
More or less.
More or less, right. So let me sum this up. Back up a little bit on the precepts. Every semester for the last 6 years, I do the talk on the precepts with college kids at San Diego State University. The 5 precepts as taught by the Buddha, and I'll give a little bit of background on this in a minute, but are to refrain from lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants, often summarized or abbreviated as drugs and alcohol. But the true meaning is anything that alters the state of mind. So the Vinaya, the code of conduct as taught by the Buddha, there's a lot of things on there to avoid. Garlic, anything that alters the state of mind, right? But
It's probably everything.
you're probably not too worried about garlic right now, right? So imagine having a discourse with college kids about no lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, drugs, or alcohol, right? You've just summed up their entire college experience. And now you're telling them to avoid it. So I introduce this topic always the same way. I'm not going to sit here and share that you all need to avoid these things. I recognize that most Dharma talks I give and most nights we're here, a lot of you are going home and you're going to have a glass of wine or drink a beer thinking about what we just talked about. Or you're going to go home, and we did a precept ceremony years ago, and I'll never forget, somebody took all 5 precepts, he showed up the next night and he says, Jeff, I broke all of them in one day, right?
You can kill them?
So, yes, all of them. I want to remind you all a little bit about the precepts, okay? I look at precepts as traffic lights. You come to a red light. Instead of drawing this out in the sake of time, I'm just going to play it out. You come to a red light. You don't have to stop. Most people choose to, but you don't have to. You could run the red light if you want. Lots of things could happen if you run the red light. You could get a ticket. You could crash. You could harm somebody else. You could harm yourself. You could also completely get away with it and get where you're going quicker. Lots of things happen when you go through a red light. Some of them may be good, some of them may be bad, right? The choice is yours. The precepts I view the same way, right? These are not laws. It's not like the Buddha sat down and made these commandments. the precepts were put in place when the Sangha was created, and he put precepts in place to help the community live in harmony. Right? So there were anywhere from, I think, 223 to 300 and something precepts. There's a lot, right? And there's some major precepts and some minor precepts. Again, they were put there not to like ruin your life, but they were put there just like red lights. They're to caution you. I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people who drank lots of beer and did lots of drugs and did lots of smart stuff. Okay? I've heard all the rationalizations and justifications in the world, right? So I share this most importantly with around intoxicants, right? Again, I don't have time to get into the lying, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct right now, just looking at your question, which is around intoxicants. And then a handful of years ago when stuff became legal, then every college kid was like, yes, now I have my reason, right? Why do we turn to them? And don't answer this. This is what we sit with. The question is, if we use intoxicants, if we drink beer every night, if we drink wine every night, if we're getting stoned every night, if we're taking a lot of tabs of acid every night, what's the reason? Can you do without it? What would happen if you were out without it? And do you have the ability to stop them at any point in time in your life? These are the questions I ask people to ask themselves around intoxicants. Not to use it as a judgment, meaning, not to go home and sit there and like have a beer and think about this talk and then tell yourself you're a bad Buddhist because you're having a beer. That's not the point, right? The question is, why? Can you do without them? And do you have the ability to stop? And when you use intoxicants, what does that lead to, right? There's a story about a Tibetan Lama years ago in the 60s, of course. And I forget all the details now, but they were at some big, festival type Woodstock thing. And lots of people then were doing acid. And so the Lama was like, well, I want to try this stuff. And so he took a lot more than he should have, right? And like an hour later, turned to the people he was with, and he was like, okay, so now what? What's supposed to happen? And the idea was that his mind was already so blown and not attached to all the crap that we're attached to, that he didn't need anything to distance himself from reality. I've worked in rehab facilities and people who have battled addiction for the last 25 years. I've seen people show up one day for treatment and then I show up the next day and they're not there, not because they called in sick, but because they're not showing up ever again. I take the addiction piece of it very seriously from having worked with it. I'm not an addict, it's not my thing. I've done just about everything out there, but I've never been an addict, so I cannot relate to it on that level. All I can do in that environment is sit and listen. But I've worked with thousands of people in that environment from a Buddhist meditation standpoint. And it's pretty scary for a lot of people. And again, I come back to, why? So the argument very often amongst many is, well, it allows me to see things differently. I'm not arguing with someone's experience of seeing things differently. But let's not try, and this isn't about you, this is just in general, let's not use that excuse to argue against or justify why popping a bunch of acid should be okay. Let's just recognize that if people have that experience, that's that experience. But that doesn't make it part of the Buddhist teachings, right? The Buddhist teachings are about waking up to life as it is, not escaping from it. And most people, whether it's drugs, alcohol, TV, movies, whatever it might be, we're escaping. And we spend so much of our life escaping from present moment. And some of these escapes are healthier than others. Sitting down and watching, Netflix for 12 hours is a much healthier escape than going on some crazy, bender for 48 hours. But we're still escaping. And it comes back to the question earlier, what are we escaping from? And we're escaping from our inability to be with our thoughts and our mind and life as it is. And in that regard, it doesn't matter whether it's drugs, alcohol, garlic, whatever it might be. It's that we're running from something. And so Buddhist teachings are to refrain from. Yeah, Travis.
I just wanted to mention in regards to the topic, there's a really good tricycle article called "It's the Journey, Not the Trip." That's a counter-argument to psychedelics being a shortcut to the practice.
Thank you. There's a great tricycle article, "It's the Journey, Not the Trip," which is a counter-argument to psychedelics being a shortcut. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes. So, and that's exactly what a lot of people think. Is like, well, I'm just gonna, take a bunch of acid and then I'll be closer to what the Buddha was talking about. Not the case. You're actually further away. So, does that help?
Somewhat.
Here's the thing. Oh, I love the discomfort on your face. And I can only see half of it. I'll close with this thought. I said, does that help? And he said, somewhat. Right? I'm going to close with this thought. All of these things within Buddhist teachings are not there for you to always agree with or always settle and be okay with. This stuff, and not just this topic tonight, for me, and it's my approach with Buddhist practice, this stuff should make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because in many regards, and again, not just the topic I was talking about, but in a lot of things, it's challenging us to be very different from what we're used to doing. Running around being mean, angry, selfish people is what a lot of us are used to doing. And this is challenging us to come away and come out of that with lots of things, not just this one topic. So my intention always is not, and you've sat with me enough to know, is not to have people leave here thinking like, oh, that was such a great talk. I feel so good, right? I'm not trying to make you feel good. I'm trying to help you explore your life. That's it. And I think the Buddhist teachings are an incredible tool to help us reflect on and explore our lives, and especially the things that we're uncomfortable with, because that means it really needs some exploration, most likely. So, yeah. All right. Then we can hug it all out later, and everything's going to be good. All right, so I'll close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost from this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer at this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. So a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. As I said at the beginning, I'm not a monk. We're not nuns who lead. We're not masters. We're not gurus. We're not teachers. We're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Just about every night we have different practices going on, different people leading from different Buddhist backgrounds. We opened nearly 15 years ago. We closed for about 16 months and put everything virtual. We opened up 7-8 weeks ago again on a very limited basis. So we have just a couple classes, well, a few. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, we meet here. I do Tuesday night, Alex does a metta loving kindness practice Wednesday, and Travis does the Dharma Bum Basics and Meditation Thursdays. And then Saturday morning, I do the intro class as well. We have our recovery sangha, which meets in person twice a week. So downstairs right now at 7 o'clock. So anyone who is battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, life, whatever it may be, that's Tuesdays downstairs as well as Sunday morning upstairs. So those are in-person classes. Also Monday through Friday, we sit 8 and 8:30 in the morning. It's a silent sit. There's no discussion. There's no talking. The temple's just open for you to come sit for 30 minutes to an hour. And then the temple's closed all day. So we're still staying very cautious, very conservative. And then we open up at nighttime for the classes again. Buddha for You, same thing. It's only open Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 3. And then it opens an hour before the evening class. But other than that, it's also closed. There is the Tonglen practice, which is beautiful on Sunday nights. That's via Zoom. It's a Tibetan Buddhist practice of sending compassion out and to yourself as well. And Kayla and Amy lead that Sunday nights. There's a beautiful Knit and Sit, the Homeless Hats Project, which is a new one also that came out during the pandemic. So a group has been meeting virtually and making beanies to pass out to people who live on the streets downtown. They've made, I don't know, a few hundred beanies over the last 4 months. It's incredible what they've done. So they meet here once a month downstairs, but the rest is all on Zoom. So they do a meditation, they knit and sit. So it's a really cool practice. Other than that, I think that's all. Have fun with all that tonight. So thanks for being here. I wish you well. We'll see you soon. Cheers. You're welcome.
Everybody's really sneaking up on us.